Now, the greatest strategy to win the mind over that the Jesuits used was Jesuit theater, Jesuit drama. Now, if we look it up in the Encyclopedia Britannica, it tells us Jesuit drama, program of theater, developed for educational and propagandist purposes in the colleges of the Society of Jesus during the 16th, 17th, and 18th centuries. Cultivated as a medium for disseminating Roman Catholic doctrine, drama flourished in the Jesuit schools for more than 200 years. Evolving from modest student exercises to elaborate productions that often rivaled the contemporary public stage in polish and technical skill. The earliest recorded performance of a Jesuit play was in 1551 at the newly founded in Sicily. In less than 20 years, plays were being performed at more than a dozen of the new Jesuit colleges springing up in cities across the continent, including Rome, Sevilla, Cordoba, Innsbruck, Munich, Vienna, and it grew into a mighty organization. By the mid-17th century, there were 300 Jesuit colleges in Europe, and in almost every one, at least one play was given each year. So originally the plays were pious to attract the people and the Protestants to come and look. But eventually, gradually, other things started creeping in. Originally there were no ladies involved, and eventually more and more ladies, and the music started changing, and it started progressively, slowly infusing the minds of people. Jesuit playwrights also drew upon material from pagan mythology, ancient history, contemporary events, all reinterpreted in terms of Catholic doctrine. So it was very cleverly done. Their stagecraft kept pace with all the newest technological developments. Music was an important element in most of the plays, ranging from simple songs to works that called for large orchestra and chorus. And Mozart, at the age of 11, wrote his first music for Jesuit theater because his father was one of the directors in Jesuit drama. And this is where the great music world was introduced into this way of acting and affecting the mind. Eventually included ballet, opera was brought in, and extravagance and luxury of many of the Jesuit productions came under heavy attack. Many of the productions were enormously expensive. So they spared no cost. And yet it cost them nothing. How did they do this? Well, one chariot taken from the enemy, Sun Tzu said, is worth 20 of our own. You never use your own money, you always use the money of others. Dramatic performances were prohibited or limited in many areas, and they ceased altogether in 1773. So this period when the Jesuits were being banned all over Europe, even the Jesuit drama disappeared. It was gone. It appears it ceased altogether in 1773, when the Society of Jesus was temporarily suppressed. So my question is, did it really disappear, or did it just go underground to reappear in another form? So really, did it disappear? That's a very good question. Well, let's ask a very modern web page, www.jesuitcp.org, their own web page, Jesuit Arts. It's definitely not gone. Let's go a little back into history. For almost 500 years, they say, theater has played a vital role in the curricula of Jesuit schools. Today, this is them speaking now. In Dallas, Jesuit theater builds on that tradition by offering a broad range of opportunities for students. And they talk about the plays and the absurdist plays and all of these issues. Drama troupes they have. This group of seniors performs local middle schools on a weekly basis as a part of Jesuit community service program. So they take their Jesuit theater into the schools. And Jesuit supports these activities with a broad curricular offering, including theater, art, stage acting, stagecraft, directing for theater. And then they ask you to be part of Jesuit theater. And it seems as though a little college here is doing something and a little college there is doing something. But they are far more brilliant than that. Embedded in ratio studorium, rational studies, were the elements of entertainment, dramatic production, composition, rhetoric, eloquence. And these courses interlinked with the spiritual exercises. So here was something to control the mind. Ignatian way of thinking, taking you into a supernatural form of religion, experiential religion, where experience becomes the norm. The feelings dictate, but the mind is bypassed. So they introduced spiritual exercises in the most subtle way to intensify the experience of Catholic doctrine over Scripture and Protestantism. They resulted in a genre of spectacular plays that won distinction as Jesuit theater. So writes, it's written in Rulers of Evil. Jesuit priest Athanasius Kircher then added something to this theater. And what he invented was the megaphone, so that he could speak to greater audiences. And then he invented broadcasting. So he is the father of the modern technology that we see right here in our midst today. Camera theater. And he perfected what was called the magic lantern, lanterna magica, the instrument where you could project images on a screen, moving images. So this was the origin of the modern cinema. Now, another interesting point that they had was the invention of cowboy movies, which were the first movies that were ever made. And by the way, the cowboys themselves and the whole cattle industry in North America was introduced by the Jesuits. They introduced it. And the one who did it was a German, Eusebio Kino, whose statue is one of those two representing Arizona in the U.S. Capitol building. He was a Jesuit professor from Ingolstadt College in Bavaria. This is where the entire Illuminist movement started. Now, the name is fascinating in itself because Kino, to this day, is the name for the theater in German. In German, you don't say, we're going to the theater, we're going to the bioscope, we're going to the Kino. Fascinating. And in these cowboy movies, there was always a morality. And the morality was always good versus evil, but it was not on the basis of Scripture that it was determined what was good or what was evil. There was another underlying morality, so that man in himself could decide what was right or wrong, and ruling by the gun. The bad guys normally lost in these movies, and the good guys won. And that's how it started. And all the actors were high Masons. If you take those early actors, Frank Sinatra, all of those that were involved in those movies, John Wayne, they were all 33-degree Freemasons. And if you follow it down through the line to this very day, most of the actors, I would say the great majority, if not all, of the major actors are all high Masons. All the singers, all of them. Now, if you're a major strategist, you don't want anyone to know that you are pulling the strings. So you are always behind the scenes, and you will have your front men. And the front men that they introduce, of course, are the Jews. They love using the Jews. and term it Zionism. But these are papal court Jews. These are not Jews in the sense as we would understand from the Bible. So knowing and obeying Scripture is not necessary in comprehending the ways of good and evil. And this is what the devil said in Eden. You will know good and evil. You don't need God to dictate it for you. Now, after World War II, during September 1957, Pope John the 23rd gave Jesuit theater a broader horizon with his encyclical Miranda Prostus. And this is what he wrote. Men must be brought into closer communion with one another. They must become socially minded. Have you heard of social doctrine? Their technical arts, cinema, sound, broadcasting, and television can achieve this aim far more easily than the printed word. The Catholic Church is keenly desirous that these means be converted to the spreading and advancement of everything that can be truly called good. I want to remind you that in the occult world, in the esoteric world, good becomes evil and evil becomes good. So if somebody says something is good, you could in your mind just twist it around and say evil must triumph. Embracing, as she does, the whole of human society within the orbit of her divinely appointed mission, she is directly concerned with the fostering of civilization amongst all people. So here is a move to embrace all of humanity. That means all of humanity must receive the same mindset. John the 23rd urged that pious national films reviewing offices be entrusted to men who are experienced in cinema. At the same time, we urge that the faithful, and particularly those who are militant in the cause of Catholic action, and added there, that must be the Jesuits and their protégé, they are the ones, be suitably instructed so that they may appreciate the need for giving these officers their willing, united, and effective support. In 1964, Pope Paul VI amplified this encyclical, Miranda Prostus, with the decree Inter Mirifica amongst the wonders. And what he said is stunning. He said, quote, "It is the Church's birthright to use," please note, to use and own the press, the cinema, the radio, television, and others of like nature. That must include the internet. So how much of the media world does he control? Do they want to control? Own and control? All of it. All of it. Then he cited a special responsibility for the proper use of the means of social communication, which rests on journalists, writers, actors, designers, producers, exhibitors, distributors, operators, sellers, critics. So even that which you hear about that which is done by them will be done by them, so the critics will be either on this side or that side of the spectrum, using Hegelian dialectic to so confuse you that you don't know whether you're Arthur or Martha at the end of the day. So it is the Church's birthright not only to own, but to control all media, all social media. The quality of the entertainment content was decreed in a section of Inter Mirifica encouraging the chronicling, the description, the representation of moral evil, which can, with the help of the means of social communication and with suitable dramatization, lead to a deeper knowledge and analysis of man and to manifestation of the true and the good in all their splendor. Here's the battle for the mind, good and evil. Now, what good and evil? Biblical, based, good and evil? Or worldly based, good and evil? Esoteric, good and evil? Well, let's continue. Emboldened by this papal decree, social communicators have been talking about free speech and all of the issues that are involved. Now, if we take cognizance of the fact that there are to own, control all the media and to use it to instill mindsets in people, then I would like to know how this is achieved without anyone knowing how it's done. Isn't that what the General Sun Tzu said? We have to achieve things without anyone knowing how it's done. And we must never, ever be the target. It's always good to use the enemy to do the work for you. And even if you represent the enemy, you will pretend that you are not the enemy, that someone else is the enemy, so that it's never you. There's always a front. Now we're going to look at some of these productions and see if we can see a pattern. The Simpsons and philosophy, the door of Homer, etc. If you read a little bit about it, it says it's a non-fiction book analyzing the philosopher and popular culture effects on the American animated sitcom. Now, people think, this stuff is silly. Who cares about all of these idiotic cartoon characters? Millions of people are sitting and watching. Millions. These playwrights that write these episodes receive millions of dollars in salary. And if you want to know what type of people are involved in writing these scripts, you will be stunned, because they are the most educated people on the planet. Harvard graduates with PhDs in philosophy and mathematics. And they use occult numerology in order to achieve what they want to achieve. So now let's have a look at some of these. And if you look at it, you'll think it was sort of innocuous. The 33rd episode of the show aired in season 2 was titled The War of the Simpsons. The episode features a plot that gives tribute to Ernest Hemingway's Old Man of the Sea, and features a battle for the ages between Homer Simpson and General Sherman. Let us quickly examine the numerology of Sherman. And if you look at this numerology, you will find that Simpson adds up to, if you take the numeric value of the letters, to 33. Now, if you look at that, you might get confused, because there are many forms of numerology out there. And looking at this, you wonder, how does this add up to 33? Since when is S, the value of S, 1? Because normally in the alphabet, you take the value of where the letter is in the alphabet. So A would be 1, B would be 2, C would be 3, etc. So why does this add up to 33? The same with Sherman. Why does that add up to 33? And here you have a 33. And it was the 33rd episode. Now, I'm just showing you this to show you that there is numerology involved. Now, numerology is a Gnostic, pagan, Kabbalistic, if you like, art. Everything that the Kabbalist will do is steeped in numerology. Everything has numbers. Everything moves in precise cycles. They will not make a move until the situation is right, till the solstice is in the right place, till the right liturgy has appeared. Everything is governed by numerology. There is an ethos of power in numerology. Now, the numbering system that they are using here is not the normal numbering system, but the Pythagorean numbering system. And if you take Pythagorean numerology, then S indeed becomes 1, and I indeed becomes 9 and 4 and 7, etc., etc., etc. So it's a highly sophisticated mathematical formula that they're using, and the names have very specific meanings. Now, you don't know that as you're watching it. You're just watching a silly movie. But put into these, there are subliminals to affect your mind. And they plant ideas which your subconscious picks up. And eventually, everybody starts thinking along those lines. Now, this is a cartoon. It's an adult cartoon. Kids also watch it. But if you then add the press and the news media And you can switch channels. I mean, you can go from CNN to BBC to Al Jazeera to whatever channel you want. You get exactly the same news at exactly the same time, repeated over and over again. There must be some coordination between those groups, otherwise they all wouldn't have exactly the same thing. Don't you think so? And there's a propaganda so that you believe what they say. So if you want to create an enemy, a public enemy, what's the best way to do it? To create an enemy and then to broadcast him across the media. So there is numerology involved, there is occultism involved, Kabbalistic occultism, and we'll go a little further. Here's a little further snippet. They introduce little subliminals all the time. So in the story, this character is often punished and has to go and write on the board his lines, and he says, I will not plant subliminal messages, but if you analyze it, really it says subliminal messagores. It doesn't say messages. He's misspelling something. But there's a subliminal there, Al Gore. So they're telling you that the agenda of Al Gore will become prominent in world affairs. And the Pope has just brought out an encyclical on this very subject, which is supported by the Al Gore philosophy. And the President of the United States of America said, this is what we have to do. So these people know in advance what they will do, how they will do it. HDTV is worth every cent. HDTV is worth every cent. That means anybody watching it, any little kid with half a brain that can start reading, will know that he needs the best quality TV so that he can be indoctrinated in the best possible fashion with the latest light effects and everything that you need in order to affect the mind, bypassing the cognitive functions of the brain. Interesting? New York, 9/11. And if you take Michael Jackson, May 20, 1997, and there he is dancing away at the destruction of New York with a massive cloud going up behind him, all done way before the event actually took place. Now, this is interesting stuff. So not only 9/11, by the way, that was a 1997 episode, and the event only occurred in 2001. So are there any other subliminals? Well, of course. Here you'll have the all-seeing eye, and they will use only half the face to project that image. And when they're unpacking their toys, you have all the occult symbols present in these subliminals. Now these, remember, are not airy-fairy people writing these. These are Harvard graduates with PhDs in philosophy and mathematics, and they have exceedingly great depth of knowledge of occultism because it's in all their subliminals. The Pledge of Allegiance does not end with Hail Satan. He has to write this over and over and over again. Now, just the expressions on the faces, you can see how it can affect little children, because what they see is what they do and what they live. Let's have a look at some of the introduction of these ideas and how it all began. In the early movies, Sammy Davis Jr. used to play a very important part. He also acted with all these 33 other Freemasons that were the early cowboy movie people. And he, of course, was known as a member of the Church of Satan. Apparently he switched, but it's fascinating that he also was a Knight of Malta. And here he is seen discussing very important issues, I believe, with producer of We Are the World. He was Lionel Richie. And he's discussing issues here with Donald Monin, SJ, Society of Jesus, president of Jesuit Boston College. And this, of course, became then the new musical production that was absolutely broadcast over the entire world. Because humanity has to unite in one mindset. And so let's create chaos, let's create false flags, let's create enemies, so that we can herd humanity into one camp. And let's have a rainbow nation and all the colors of the rainbow represented. I'm a red Indian, I'm a Chinese person, I'm a that, and I'm a this, and we are the world, we are the people. And what is the spirit behind it? I ask myself in this process. Now, if we continue in this modern Hollywood era, let me remind you again, it is the church's birthright to own and control all media productions. So who really controls Hollywood? It's not the Jews. There's another power that controls this entity. So we'll introduce extraterrestrialism. It becomes very prominent. And then we'll link it to messianic messages as we condition minds as to what will happen. Close encounters of a third kind. Let's bring in things which can be, well, determined either extraterrestrial or demonic intervention. And all of the great megastars, well, they don't hide where their affiliations are, as you can see. Simon Cowell's little jet ski with his nice little Masonic symbol right on the front. They're not scared. And today, everything is out in the open. If you are interested, you can go to the web and you can punch in any actor that is prominent in the world today, any singer, any group, and look at the occult connections, their Masonic connections. I had a young girl who got tickled pink and started doing this. She drove me crazy with the thousands of things she sent me. But she did a great job. Every single one is involved. And they all blatantly confess to their affiliations on their Facebook pages and on their this and on their that. I don't have time to look into all of that stuff. But if you're interested, you can verify it. I don't have to give you the details. That's not what I'm here about. I'm wanting to discuss the mindset and what happens behind the scenes. Now, I want to discuss one or two or three or four of the mega blockbusters. This one was not too much of a success with Nicolas Cage in theaters. Season of the Witch, in which there's a medieval night situation and this conflict between Islam and the Crusades and desertion, and then there is a witch who is possessed. But the way they deal with it, with all the blood and the gore and the drama to distract your mind, you always end up somewhere in a Catholic conclave. There's always a monastery where there is secret information and hidden knowledge, which eventually, even if all the monks are slaughtered in the process, the hidden knowledge will be able to be used and exercise this demon power. The power lies always in the church, and it's always available to you through the church. You've probably noticed that every single Hollywood movie has a Catholic priest. You never see a Protestant one. National Treasure, already it tells you right there on the cover what their intention is with the all-seeing eye. And this one is so full of masonry. Nobody should watch this stuff, but I'm just telling you that this is how children and people are being indoctrinated into a way of thinking. When you come to the movie The Exodus, Gods and Kings, it is probably one of the most godless movies ever made. And I don't have to discuss it with you. You can even watch it on this very channel where there's a discussion about this movie and how the directors feel. They are enemies of God. They hate God. They call Moses the most arrogant person that ever lived when the Bible says he was the most humble person that ever lived. They don't believe in God. They distort God. They twist the word of God. They ridicule God in every possible way. So they cannot be from God. They must be from the other camp. Then this massive production, The Kingdom of Heaven, spectacular, epic, and adventure. The main message of the movie is a post-Enlightenment opposition to violence carried out in the name of religion. Now, there's a very powerful message. My question is, who creates the violence in the name of religion so that you can finally end the violence in the name of religion? Is it a master strategist sitting somewhere behind the scenes, pulling the strings, making enemies appear as enemies when actually there are no enemies, being in the field beforehand, using chariots of others as your own? Interesting. Again, if you want to find the Jesuit connection, you have to search a bit. You have to dig a little bit, but it's always there. It's somewhere in the wood pile. You just have to search around. Said Father Leo Lefebvre, the theology professor of Jesuit-run Fordham University. He said, this is what the movie is about. The Times then tries to reassert the film's group hug, whatever status, with a quick quote from a cooperative priest who says exactly what they want to hear. The Reverend George Dennis, a Jesuit priest and a history professor at Loyola Marymount University in Los Angeles, who was one of the 5 experts provided with the script for Kingdom of Heaven, said he was impressed with the nuance and accuracy. The Christians are always the bad guys, the others are always the good guys. This is a mindset without the backdrop of history that is being instilled in humanity. Historically, I found it pretty accurate. Well, if you have a distorted mind, I don't know whether you know, but you cannot find the history of the Reformation in any meaningful way in any modern document dealing with that subject. You have to dig for the old moldy ones. When you open them, they have this moldy smell and this damp, acrid feel. Then you know you've got gold in your hands. Because the Jesuits have rewritten everything. They own the press. They own the press, so you rewrite history, as we will see. Not so fast, George, etc. So they're arguing about it, but the fact of the matter is what I'm showing you, the ones supporting it from behind are who? Jesuits. Jesuits. The Count of Monte Cristo, probably one of the most brilliant allegorical movies, and the Count of Monte Cristo, who suffers greatly and eventually becomes mega rich, but he doesn't get the girl. Who is he? Well, he's none other than the Jesuit general himself. About the story of the Jesuits and the demise of the Jesuits and the resurrection of the Jesuits, immensely wealthy, that he can purchase the whole world, if you like. So these are stories that are implanted, and the hero is always, in the end, the evil triumphing over good, made to appear as good triumphing over evil. Brilliant strategy. Take any of the Indiana Jones movies, the Raiders of the Lost Ark, and all of these issues. The language that is used is demeaning to God. Although it uses the themes of the Bible, eventually it leads you straight into hardcore occultism, Gnostic thinking. Now, if you've prepared the mind, you come up with movies like Left Behind, and they spent billions. They don't mind spending billions. How much do these productions cost? And already in the Middle Ages, they were criticized for the vast sums. they feel nothing for spending millions upon millions, if not billions of dollars on a production if the ends justify the means. And the Left Behind series, of course, implanted the Jesuit theology of dispensationalism, which comes straight out of the Jesuit camp, with Cardinal Bellarmine adding his thinking patterns to those of Alcázar and Ribera that went before, to set the stage for getting rid of the mindset of the Protestant world that the papacy was Antichrist, and replaced it with this airy-fairy nonsense, which is then propagated across the world in mega productions. They don't care whether it's a box office success or a box office failure, as long as the message comes through. Lords of War. All of these are phenomenal. Now, I thought I'd take one where I've heard so many of our own people even saying, well, this is one should watch because it really shows us where we are. And I know that many have exposed it for what it is, and that's good, but let's just make sure again that we're not speculating here over issues that might not be so. Mel Gibson and the Passion of the Christ. This is probably the one movie that moved the evangelical world to tears like no other movie prior to it. And I want to just go through a few scenes, but let's just establish again the connection. Mel Gibson receiving his honorary doctorate at Loyola Jesuit Marymount University. He must have received his honorary doctorate for something good. You know what? This doesn't pay, because his life was a misery after he made this. But irrespective of what his future plans are, which I've heard about, the fact of the matter is this is a Jesuit production, and it has Jesuit theology. But before we go there, let's just have a look at the prophecy in Zechariah so we can understand the context. Zechariah 11, then I said to them, if it is agreeable to you, give me my wages, and if not, refrain. So they weighed out for my wages 30 pieces of silver. Who's it talking about? It's a prophecy about Jesus Christ. And the Lord said to me, throw it to the potter. That princely price they set on me. So I took the 30 pieces of silver and threw them into the house of the Lord for the potter. Then I cut in two my other staff, bonds, that I might break the brotherhood between Judah and Israel. They rejected the Lord Jesus Christ. And the Lord said to me, next take for yourself the implements of a foolish shepherd. The good shepherd, they sold him out. The good shepherd, they set him aside. They crucified him. So if you want to set aside and reject the good shepherd, well, then be satisfied with the foolish shepherd. Now let's look at the foolish shepherd. For indeed, I will raise up a shepherd in the land who will not care for those who are cut off. He won't care for them. Nor seek the young, nor heal those that are broken, nor feed those that stand still. This is not a good shepherd. This is an evil shepherd. But he will eat the flesh of the fat and tear their hooves in pieces. So he will be a destructive shepherd. He will destroy mankind. Woe to the worthless shepherd who leaves the flock. A sword shall be against his arm and against his right eye. His arm shall completely wither, and his right eye shall be totally blinded. Right. Those are the criteria in the prophecy of Zechariah. And these are the criteria which apply to the good shepherd or the bad shepherd? Bad shepherd, the evil one. Now remember, in the occult world, good becomes evil and evil becomes good. So now let's go to the movie. In most of the movie, Jesus appears with his right eye completely shut, smashed. There's the symbol of the eye. There's only one eye. If you take the Council of Foreign Relations, their Messiah, who is naked, and by the way, in this movie, Jesus appears out of the grave naked. I'm sure he didn't. He appeared with a robe of righteousness. He was not naked. This Messiah of theirs is naked and only shows the left eye. The right eye is never seen in their Messiah. So here, Jesus' arm is dislocated, so says this webpage, in order to make his hand reach the nail hole, meaning that his arm should be fully extended and straight at all times. However, in almost all shots of him on the cross, his body sags forward with his arms bent at almost 90-degree angle. So his arm is withered and his right eye is smashed. Now let's just make sure again. Let's go to the occult world, Blavatsky. The devil is now called darkness by the church, whereas in the Bible, he's called the Son of God. The bright star of the early morning, Lucifer. There's a whole philosophy of dogmatic craft in the reason why the first archangel who sprang from the depth of chaos was called Lux, the luminous son of the morning. Or man, Vantaric dawn, he was transformed by the church into Lucifer or Satan, because he is higher and older than Jehovah and had to be sacrificed to the new dogma. Now in the esoteric world, Satan is higher and older than the other brother, who is Jesus. And the war between the two of them is raging. And he, the older brother, was deprived of his position but will regain it. He will be the victor. So good becomes evil and evil becomes good. Of course, we know that he's a created being because the Bible tells us so, but not in the esoteric world. Or another quote here from Blavatsky. Esoterically, he's also the serpent or the dragon that tempted Eve, and the dragon is an old glyph for astral light, which is the wisdom of chaos. So Jehovah is the serpent. He's the bad one. God is evil. So evil becomes good and good becomes evil. Now let's continue. In the movie, while on the cross, Satan, with an effeminate image, walks by and he has the birth of the other Messiah. I want you to look at this child because you can see his hairy arms and his baldness and his demeanor, and we're going to just quickly play this. I want you to look at the smile on this evil face. As he looks at the cross. They cannot have, look at the hairs on his back. They cannot have created a more evil image than this. And it's virtually subliminal because nobody really notices it in the movie. And look at that evil smile. Now, good becomes evil and evil becomes good. So the evil is hanging where? On the cross. But the real evil is actually the good, because you have to turn everything around in the esoteric world. This is actually a symbol of the victory of Satan over Jesus Christ. This is what it means. Now, let's just make sure. Now, Gibson told Christianity Today, I've been actually amazed at the way I would say the evangelical audience has, hands down, responded to this film more than any other Christian group. What makes it so amazing, he says, that the film is so Marian. Gibson calls it the tremendous co-redemptrix and mediatrix. So the whole movie is about Mary. Mary is the one who consoles everyone. Mary is the great hero of this movie, not Jesus Christ. Now, another final little interesting little tidbit about this movie. The penitent thief on the cross was wearing around his neck the Catholic brown scapular there. So if you look at the shot of him, he's wearing a scapular. Nowhere in the Bible do you read that he wears a scapular. Now, what is the scapular? The scapula is a structure that you wear around which guarantees you that Mary will let you bypass purgatory and take you straight to heaven. So it is a promise to Mary, not to God. So Jesus could not have given him the right to go to heaven one day. It's Mary that will decide who goes and who does not. But Mary, as we know, is an acronym for Lucifer, because she was immaculate without having to need the atonement. And then that Jesus said, it is accomplished, rather than it is finished. According to Rome, it was the Eucharist which was accomplished at the cross. Now, this word accomplished is rather interesting. The Eucharist, the sacrament of our salvation accomplished by Christ on the cross, is also a sacrifice of praise in thanksgiving for the work of creation, says the Catholic Catechism of the Catholic Church. So it was accomplished, almost consummated. And it is, of course, the perpetual sacrifice of Jesus Christ, the constant treading underground of the Son of God, keeping in perpetual death, worshipped as a corpse. This movie is evil. And you can see the underlying evil in the subliminals. It is Gnosticism at its worst, dished up and sold to Christians as the representation of the suffering of the Son of God. It is an evil movie. John 19 verse 30 says, Jesus therefore, when he had taken vinegar, said, it is consummated, and bowing his head, he gave up the ghost. So says the Douay-Rheims Bible, which is the official Jesuit Bible. Whereas a decent Bible will say, when Jesus therefore had received the vinegar, he said, it is finished. And he bowed his head and gave up the ghost. Now, Thea's definition is to bring to a close, to finish. The sacrifice is complete. It's not complete in this movie. Now, another interesting movie with Mel Gibson and Julia Roberts is Conspiracy Theory. Now, there are people who love to talk about conspiracists. And there are many conspiracists out there who are incredibly confused. But if you have the filter of the Bible and prophecy, and you put everything through that filter, and what comes out at the other end harmonizes not only with history and current events, but with prophecy as well, it's not conspiracy, it's confederacy. And the Bible says, call it not a confederacy, a confederacy. So, I'm a confederist, I'm not a conspiracist. But in this movie, it's very interesting because he is subject to MK mind control, monarch mind control. And the whole issue is blatantly showing you how it is done. And in actual fact, this is what happens in the world. You can program anyone to do anything. So you can create the mega criminals and the murderers. When we were young, little children in school, there was no such thing as someone going psychologically berserk and blasting away everybody in the school. But now, it happens on such a regular basis. Have the kids changed? No. Something happening behind the scene. So all of these stars are all involved. Now, one of the things that is interesting about this movie, and it's only subliminal, it's only a flash. This book constantly appears in the movie. So Mel Gibson is in his mind-controlled state trying to get something, and he's trying to get copies of this book, and it's always disappearing, and he opens a shelf, and it'll flash for a millisecond and be gone. And you have to look very carefully. I don't suggest any of you look. It's called The Catcher of the Rye. So I want to know, what's The Catcher of the Rye all about? Must be important. And who would suggest that something be in a movie of this nature? So I did some searching, and it's very hard to find until I found something interesting. I found an interesting book, The Secrets of Jesuit Soup Making. Written, of course, by Jesuit brother Rick Curry. there's his title, SJ, Society of Jesus, and it is indeed a recipe book. But every book written by a Jesuit always has a what? Has a purpose. And it always is the mindset of the society as a whole regarding its oath and subject to the Jesuit general himself. So, of course, it is interlaced with all the Jesuit philosophy. And he's telling about his student days and how he was in a curriculum, etc. I was reflecting the other day on a Jesuit teacher of mine at St. Joseph, etc., and he talks about the curriculum. And he says here, the interesting thing is, the curriculum at St. Joseph was in the old style, the ratio studiorum, rational thinking. In other words, rationalism and not Bible-based thinking. The Jesuit plan of studies, first published in 1599, that was found in all the Jesuit high schools of the United States at that time, etc., etc., etc. So you're getting the picture. And then he says over here that he had an enormous impact on me, this teacher he had, this Jesuit, became a Jesuit himself. In English class, he had us read The Catcher in the Rye. Aha! Huh. So the Jesuits make you read that book, and there it is subliminally in this movie everywhere. I don't remember much about the novel from that first reading when I was a freshman, but I do remember that this Jesuit father said, this was the kind of novel you should read again and again in your lifetime. So I was interested, what is this all about? It's about rebellion. And it's brilliantly written. It is the normal development of a youth, and this youth develops the capacity, or the rebellion that comes up, and how to exercise this rebellion, and eventually to change the world through rebellion. But in such a brilliant way that the one who is rebellious against everything, his parents and society and you name it, turns out to be the greatest saint of them all. Who was the greatest rebel in heaven? And doesn't he want to appear as the greatest saint, the wronged one? So it's implanting a mindset of dissent against the order. What order was the Jesuit order created to destroy? Protestantism. So you have to rebel against Protestantism. One of the most evil movies in the history of Jesuitism is probably V for Vendetta. Now in this movie, they have this masked man, because he was injured, severely injured in a fire, so he went through the fires of affliction. It is a skit of the Jesuits and the gunpowder plot, where they wanted to blow up the British Parliament and King James. Now, again, whether it's a false flag and it's a double false flag or a triple false flag, let's not go into it, but British Parliament was that bastion of Protestantism that had banned Jesuitism and the mindset of Jesuitism and was the protecting factor of Protestantism. So it was the ultimate enemy. It had to be destroyed. And Guy Fawkes and 6 Jesuits wanted to blow up the British Parliament and the King, thus ridding the world of the menace of Protestantism. Now, the mask is the face of Guy Fawkes, who was sentenced to death and martyred. But in the movie, constantly, you are reminded that this story may never be forgotten. This man was not a villain, this man is a hero. Now, just in history alone, they've managed to do that, because every year on exactly the same date when he tried to blow it up, they celebrate Guy Fawkes. And it's a joyous occasion. Kids can't wait for Guy Fawkes. You positivize that which is negative, and you use the negative to your advantage. They even got Shakespeare to write it, which I doubt. His Jesuit superior wrote it for him, his Gnostic Medici learned supervisor, and filtered it in amongst the people. as this evil of the Jesuits and made a joke of it. And eventually, as a consequence, the Jesuits were actually allowed to operate, or the Catholics at least, in England again. You always have to be a super strategist. Now, in this movie, this young lady eventually is the one that pulls the trigger because he dies just beforehand, so she becomes an acronym of Mary, which is Lucifer, who will destroy Protestantism, and where they first failed in their early attempts, they will succeed in their later life. And this is one of the advertisements. He's making the Masonic crossed swords, which you will find everywhere in Masonry and in Gnostic Freemasonry. An X is an ancient symbol, according to Jim Tressner, 33 Degrees, Scottish Rite Journal. An X is an ancient symbol for change or transformation, long associated in medieval and Renaissance art with the coming of the Messiah who shall make all things new. So this is a religious movie showing the victory of Satan and the Jesuit order over Protestantism, the overthrow. That's why in the cathedrals they always have Loyola standing on the head of Martin Luther, crushing him, destroying the Bible. They make no bones about who the enemy is. And it's interesting that in this movie, eventually, this is an artist's rendition, the Parliament, and of course, all of the buildings associated with it, blows up and is completely destroyed. Nothing left. But the clock stands where? It is the final hour. It is finished. They have succeeded. The job is done. Protestantism and Bible-based theology will disappear. And eventually, this masked man who stands for Guy Fawkes and the effort to overthrow Protestantism, the mask is worn by the entire nation. What does that mean? It means that the entire nation, through time, has been indoctrinated to have the same character and mold and thinking as they had. When the Bible tells us about the face of God, Moses was not to see the face of God. He conceived me from behind, because nobody can see the face of God and live. So I'll hide you in the cleft of a rock and I'll cover you with my hand. And I will go by, and then the character of God is given in the most beautiful poetic form. The face stands for the character. It stands for the mind. It stands for the thinking. The world will wander after the beast. It will be indoctrinated to have the mindset that he wants you to have. Now, I want to know where this is going to lead. And how do you carry on with this? I just want to do a few more pointers here.